All right, man, peace. So as many of you brothers know, well over a year ago, I started a series called Who Are the Real Coons? And the reason why I was inspired to start a series by that name is so that I could substantiate my assertion that there's a concerted attempt being made, particularly by the mainstream liberal media and their subsidiaries, that being the liberal blacks on the wokosphere, and also in real life, so-called everyday life, to try to accentuate the term coon or sellout to denote a so-called black person who thinks for themselves and is not intent on being part and parcel of the liberal movements, which constantly are trying to promise so-called black people that their paradise and their redemption is going to come in the form of embracing Marxist philosophies. Marxism is a covert term for Luciferianism. That's all it is, and that's why you'll notice every time a so-called black man or woman declares that they're not a quote-unquote Democrat, they get called a sellout or a coon. Every time a so-called black man or black woman declares that they do not adhere to the belief systems being espoused by the Black Lesbians Matter movement, or what's called the Black Lives Matter movement, they're called a coon. Every time a so-called black man or black woman states that they're not going to impute any level of emotional vitriol or hatred towards President Trump because they understand and see things clearer than just that, trying to blame one person for the plight of so-called black people, they get called a coon. And that's because that is a concerted attempt, once again, being made by the mainstream liberal media and the globalist Marxist forces to try to get all so-called black people to kowtow to the same sentiment. And once again, that is why I was inspired in the first place and remain focused on continuing this series of who the real coons are. Who are the real sellouts? Who are the real so-called black men and women who are making a mockery of our people? Because as of right now, we're at the lowest estate that we've ever been at when it comes to an understanding of who we are and who we're supposed to be. For some strange reason, so-called black people believe that they're making advancements in this society, and we're not from a three-dimensional perspective. From a two-dimensional basic perspective, I guess you can say that you've made some advancements because you can project your sentiments, you can express yourself in ways that you couldn't 70, 80 years ago. But how much farther have we advanced when we still only control 0.01% of the economy? So basically, what the powers that be have done is expanded the dimensions of the crib that you reside in. Once again, our people are at the level of a child. I like to say that the so-called black man and woman are emotionally and spiritually on the level of a proverbial teenager. But many times they treat our people like children, like infants, like toddlers, because that's how we conduct ourselves. When you see how we respond to certain situations, they understand that we have no idea what we're doing or how to solve the issue. It's almost like a professional boxer. If they were in the ring with an opponent who was completely untrained, they would not even take them seriously. They would not even throw blows with full power and with full speed because they know that there's no challenge. So you just play with your opponent, and that's what they do with so-called black men and women. They constantly mock and play with us in movies, on television shows, in commercials, on TV news network storylines. They just constantly mock the so-called black man and woman, and you really can only see it if you understand what our true history is. So that brings me back to the focus of this video. Who are the real coons? The real coons, the real sellouts, the real people making a mockery of their own people, their own nation, are the gang members, the drug dealers, the welfare queens, the idiots, the two-dimensional thinkers, whose sole focus is to keep our people at a lower state and to keep us mentally handicapped and dependent on the validation of the mainstream liberal media, and particularly the so-called Democratic Party. So in this segment here, we're going to see a situation that occurred in the Bronx, where a real hero, a so-called black father, was able to shield his 3 children as they were in a car dealership being attacked by 2 coons, at least 2 coons. It may have been 3 coons, so-called gang members who wanted to have a shootout at the car dealership because supposedly they may have seen one of their rivals. So let's see what occurs here.
Wounded while trying to protect his kids, a father now speaking out after a shooting in the Bronx.
Now, brothers, this is a real victim. Not like the media-generated, lionized pseudo-martyrs like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, so-called black people who clearly made bad decisions, and it precipitated, if not necessitated, their demise. As I always state, most of those storylines are ritualistic. Really, all of them are ritualistic if they're allowed to be broadcast nationally or internationally. They don't report stuff like this because they know that the Black Lesbians Matter movement does not deal with situations like this. They're not concerned with the actual issues that are permeating the so-called black community because they have no solutions. All they have is emotional content and emotional sentiment. That's why nothing of substance emanates from that group. Basically, they're a huge red herring, and they act as a channel to funnel quote-unquote black thought towards pansexuality and Luciferianism. That's it. And that's why their group is systematically getting exposed. And I told you, brothers, from 4 years ago that they're nothing but Marxists and lesbians. That's all they are. And now it's being brought to the forefront.
He managed to shield his children when the bullets flew at a car dealership.
Look at this. That's a real hero right there. Almost a real martyr protecting his children. That's the way that we're going to be able to change what's going on in this society within the so-called black community. Turn the tide. It's going to start with the so-called black man making better decisions and who he decides to inseminate and presiding over his children. And if need be, willing to give his life for his children. That's a real hero right there. Not George Floyd. Some dude strung out on drugs who was putting pistols to pregnant women's stomachs. Or Breonna Taylor. Some chick infatuated with a dope boy. No disrespect. Or Ahmaud Arbery. Some mentally fractured Negro who liked to hang out in the park with an overcoat on and no shirt underneath. Nothing against them. Not saying that they necessarily deserve to die. Not saying that. But brothers, please understand that when you make stupid decisions, that's going to bring a lot of unfortunate energy upon you. And that's all of us. We've all done dumb shit in our lives. None of us are perfect. But when you continually and continuously do stupid shit, I promise you eventually something terrible is going to happen to you.
CBS 2's Andrea Grimes has more.
Like a scene from the Wild West, watch as a gunman opens fire, shattering a glass door. Mere inches away, Anthony Jefferson jumped on top of his 3 children, throwing his body over theirs, shielding them from bullets.
I just went into fatherly mode at that moment, and I just wanted to keep the kids safe.
Jefferson spoke with Inside Edition about the terrifying ordeal at On the Road Automotive Group on Boston Road in the Eastchester section of the Bronx.
Boston Road, shut up. Niggas let it fly over there, boy. Good Lord.
He was there last Monday night around 7:30 with his 3 sons, picking out a car for his wife's birthday, when the bullets started flying. Investigators say Jefferson was an innocent bystander. He was hit in the thigh and foot. His children were not physically hurt.
Thank goodness. And thank goodness he was only shot in the foot and in the thigh. And the shot that he got hit in the thigh did not hit a major artery. Thank goodness.
Jefferson's wife was overcome with emotion.
I have to constantly deal with my 2-year-old crying in his sleep, saying the guy shot my daddy.
Yes, unfortunately, that happens a lot more in the so-called black community than an innocent, unarmed, so-called black man being killed by the cops. Shit like this happens a lot more. There are vast amounts, far more so-called black men being killed due to incidents like this. Upstanding so-called black men like the father of those children. Then you'll see cops strangling unarmed so-called black men. Does that mean that it's okay that wicked cops do that to unarmed so-called black men? No. But if we're going to focus on what's affecting the so-called black community, we have to start at the major issues and then work our way down. And what we'll find is that by the time we get to police brutality and we heal the major issues, you'll find that the police brutality issue will be healed by osmosis, because we'll be holding ourselves accountable to the degree where the police will be totally marginalized. We will have empowered ourselves economically to where we won't even need them. But our people are not ready to think on that level because we're being weighed down by these fucking coons. Once again, a lot of these niggas gotta go. A lot of our people have to be reformed or removed. You can talk all that Wakanda shit all you want. At the end of the day, when you watch the film Black Panther, the concept of Wakanda was based on stringent order and adherence to strong culture, which are two things that our people do not embrace. So you can try to project yourself into that Wakanda shit all you want. You're living a dream like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. It's phony.
Daddy, the bad guys, they hurt my daddy.
Police believe the shooting was gang-related and not...
No shit. Real coons, gang members, drug dealers.
...all to the dealership. They say 3 men began shooting multiple rounds at another man.
3 coons.
Fired back. Police say one of the shooters stole a customer's car outside to get away. For the Jeffersons...
Y'all my heroes too.
Now look at this. Here's a so-called black man who's handling his business, being the father that he's supposed to be. At least hopefully that's what he's doing. Once again, none of us are perfect. But the fact that he was ready to give his life for his 3 sons, his sons will always remember that. They will always remember what he did. There are things that I can still remember my father doing for me when I was a small boy. They get indelibly seared into your mind.
They're just grateful they all survived.
We really blessed. So, I think the man upstairs, I think everybody.
As Jefferson continues to recover, police say they continue searching for suspects. No arrests have been made yet in this case. In the Eastchester section of the Bronx, Andrea Grimes, CBS 2 News.
All you gotta do is take a big headlight and shine it up into the sky, and it should be the face of a damn raccoon. Them niggas, they'll gather under that light, then you can arrest them. Those are the real coons, man.
In the Eastchester section of the Bronx, Andrea Grimes, CBS 2 News.
A GoFundMe page has raised $280,000 so far for Jefferson's medical bills and
Damn, that's good. Shit.
for his children. The page says that Jefferson lost his job due to his injuries.
That's what coons do. They destroy their own community and they tear down the upstanding members of the so-called black community. It wasn't the police that did that. It was these low-level coons that have to go. But anyway, that's going to be the end of that video, brothers. Always remember that we have the power to change things. We don't have to march or protest or beg the so-called white man to give us things that we should be able to generate and create for ourselves. We don't need them. And the longer we spend time trying to force ourselves or compel ourselves to believe that we need others when we can do it on our own, all that's going to do is delay our own improvement as a nation of people. But anyway, peace.